I was strolling along the platform, waiting for the arrival of the Amritsar Express, when I saw Mr Khushal handcuffed to a policeman. I had not recognized him at first, a paunchy gentleman with a lot of grey in his beard and a certain arrogant amusement in his manner. It was only when I came closer and we were almost face to face that I recognized my old Hindi teacher. Startled, I stopped and stared, and he stared back at me, a glimmer of recognition in his eyes. It was over 20 years since I had last seen him, standing jauntily before the classroom blackboard, and now here he was tethered to a policeman and looking at jaunty as ever. Good evening, sir, I stammered in my best public school manner. Mr Khushal's face lit up with pleasure. So you remember me? It's nice to see you again, my boy. Forgetting that his right hand was shackled to the policeman's left, I made as if to shake hands. Mr Khushal thoughtfully took my right hand in his left and gave it a rough squeeze. A faint odor of cloves and cinnamon reached me, and I remember how he had always been redolent of spices when standing beside my desk, watching me agonize over my Hindi-English translation. He had joined the school in 1948, not long after the partition. Until then, there had been no Hindi teacher. We had been taught Urdu and French. Then came a ruling that Hindi was to be a compulsory subject, and at the age of 16, I found myself struggling with a new script. When Mr Khushal joined the staff, there was no one else in the school who knew Hindi or who would assist Mr Khushal's ability as a teacher. And now, once again, he stood before me, only this time he was in the custody of the law. I was still recovering from the shock when the train drove in and everyone on the platform began making a rush for the compartment doors. As the policeman elbowed his way through the crowd, I kept close behind him and his charge, and as a result, I managed to get in the same third-class compartment. I found a seat right opposite Mr Khushal. He didn't seem to be the least bit embarrassed by the handcuffs or by the stares of his fellow passengers. Rather, it was a policeman who looked unhappy and ill at ease. As the train got underway, I offered Mr Khushal one of the parathas made for me by my forceful landlord. He accepted it with alacrity. I offered one to the constable as well, but although he looked at it with undisguised longing, he felt duty-bound to the decline. "Why have they arrested you, sir?" I asked. "Is it very serious?" "A trivial matter," said Mr Khushal. "Nothing to worry about. I shall be at liberty soon." "But what did you do?" Mr Khushal leaned forward. "Nothing to be ashamed of," he said in a confiding tone. "Even a great teacher like Socrates will fall of the law." "You mean one of your people made a complaint?" "And why should one of my people make a complaint?" Mr Khushal looked offended. They were the beneficiaries. It was for them. He noticed that I looked mystified and decided to come straight to the point. It was simply a question of false certificates. "Oh," I said, feeling deflated. Public school boys are always prone to jump to the wrong conclusions. "Your certificates, sir?" "Of course not. Nothing wrong with my certificates. I had them printed in Lahore in 1946. "With age come respectability," I remarked. "In that case, whose?" Why? The matriculation certificates have been providing all these years to the poor idiots who would never have got through on their own. You mean you gave them your own certificates? That's right. And if it had not been for so many printing mistakes, no one would have been any wiser. You can't find a good press these days. That's the trouble. It was a public service, my boy. I hope you appreciate that. It isn't fair to hold a boy back in life simply because he can't get through some pony exam. Mind you, I don't give my certificates to anyone. They came to me only after they have failed 2 or 3 times. And I suppose you charge something. Only if they can pay. There's no fake sum. Whatever they like to give me, I've never been greedy in these matters. And you know, I'm not unkind. Which is true enough. I thought, looking out of the carriage window at the green fields of Moga, and remembering the half-yearly Hindi exam when I had started blankly at the question paper, knowing that I was totally incapable of answering any of it. Mr. Khushal had come walking down the line of desks and stopped at mine, rubbing gloves all over me. Come on, boy. Why haven't you started? Can't do it, sir, I said. It's too difficult. Never mind. He had urged in a whisper, do something, copy it out. And so, to the past the time I had copied out the entire paper, word for word. And a fortnight later, when the results were out, I found I had passed. But, sir, I had stammered, approaching Mr. Khushal when I found him alone. I never answered the paper. I couldn't translate the passage. All I did was copy it out. That's why I gave you pass marks. He had answered imperturbably. You have such neat handwriting. If you do learn Hindi, my boy, you will write a beautiful script. And remembering that moment, I was now filled with compassion for my old teacher. I leaning across, I placed my hand on his knee and said, Sir, if they convict you, I hope it won't be for long. And when you came out, if you happen to be in the Delhi or Firozpur, please look me up. You see, I'm still rather hopeless at Hindi, and perhaps you could give me tuition. I would be glad to pay. Mr. Khushal threw back his head and laughed, and the entire compartment shook with his laugh. Teach you Hindi? He cried. My dear boy, what gave you the idea that I ever knew any Hindi? But sir, if not Hindi, what were you teaching us all the time at school? Punjabi, he shouted, and everyone jumped in their seats. Pure Punjabi, but how were you to know the difference? Want more content like this? You could like, share and subscribe.